Well, as I look at my notes from our discussion today, I see on the one hand about 10 arguments that have been offered for theism or Christian theism, almost none of which have been responded to or refuted. The argument from contingency for why something exists rather than nothing. The argument from the beginning of the universe, explained in philosophy and cosmology. The argument from the fine-tuning of the universe was not answered adequately. The mere mortality of human beings doesn't in any way show that the universe was not fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life. The moral argument has not been refuted because it's been simply subject to the confusion between the basis for moral values and how we come to know moral values. And the argument is not that you need to believe in God in order to behave properly. The argument rather is that without a transcendent foundation, there is no objective moral value. These are just the sociological, biological spin-offs of the evolutionary process. The ontological argument hasn't been dealt with. The argument from biological complexity and DNA information. Lee's argument from consciousness, mind. Doug Wilson's argument from the impossibility of rationality in a naturalistic universe in which everything is just fizzing rather than the result of rational thought. And finally, Denison's appeal to self-validating experience. Seems to me all of these provide very powerful reasons for thinking that theism is true, and then the radical personal claims and the resurrection of Jesus, which I think are historically well validated, provide good grounds for believing Christian theism is true. So I have to disagree with Jim Denison when he says atheism isn't falsifiable. On the contrary, I think it is very plausibly falsified, not simply falsifiable. It is falsified. Now, on the other hand, I hear one argument basically for atheism tonight, and that would be the argument from the problem of suffering. But here the difficulty is that Christopher admitted that, given Christian theism, it is an internally coherent worldview. Denison and Wilson explained that given God's desire to create human beings who have freedom to make significant moral choices, and that there will be justice and deserts appropriately given in the afterlife, it makes perfectly good sense to think that there would be a world that would be suffused with natural and moral suffering. And Christopher doesn't refute the point. He just then says, but I don't see any reason to believe this worldview is true. But we've just given 10 reasons to think that it's true. And none of these have been refuted. So I think Christopher needs to come to grips more rigorously with the arguments. I also heard from Christopher what I expected to hear today: colorful phraseology, rhetoric, congenial personality, but little intellectual engagement with the substance of the argument. And so I want to invite Christopher for our debate on April 4th at Biola University, that you do some more preparation and come prepared to engage specifically with these arguments, because I think that's where the real issue is going to lie. We need to ask ourselves, are there good grounds for believing Christian theism is true? Or is this, as others have suggested, simply a dislike of the Christian God that leads one to say, I'm not going to believe in him because I wouldn't like it if it's true? That would not be a rational way to behave. It's got to be more based not simply on personal preference.
No such assertion was ever made by me.
No, that was the accusation made of you, and I think that it sticks, given the absence of argument on your side and your admission that Christian theism isn't a coherent worldview if it has good evidence for it. So I think we need to see more specific engagement with the arguments that have been offered tonight.